Hello everybody, welcome along. My name is Benjamin Bloom. This is the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel. Please leave your bias at the door and join us as we discuss who are the most influential players at the clubs you support, the clubs I cover here on the channel. I'm sure, like many of you, I was tuned in to find out what happened in the Super Bowl and lots of coverage on Mr. Tom Brady and his influence on his Tampa Bay team, where he brought his winning mentality across and pushed everybody on to glory over in Tampa to win his 7th championship. You can see the BBC there comparing him with Michael Jordan. Yes, I understand American team sport does manage to skew a little bit more towards the individual. Yes, American football, NFL, especially with everything going through the quarterback, indeed. But it did get me thinking, who are the most influential players at the clubs you guys support? So, there was the shout out yesterday on Twitter and on YouTube to find out what you guys thought. So what I've done is I have in the main used your ideas here. So thank you for the input. And that works on two levels because A, you've helped me do my research, and B, when the comments inevitably come in, they're not my ideas, they're your ideas. Although I have overruled on a couple of cases where we got split answers, let's just say. When we're talking influential, adjective, having a lot of influence on someone or something, remember, this is not who is your best player. This is who is the most influential. They may not be the best player. James Milner at Liverpool may not be the best player. Mohamed Salah may be the best player there, or Virgil van Dijk, whoever. But maybe sometimes the standards are set and the kind of leadership qualities and the intangibles are things we don't necessarily see on the pitch. In some cases, it will be the best player. They lead by example with what they do on the pitch. But in other cases, it may be different. So I'm really fascinated to see what you guys have said. As you know, if you watch the channel, I cover 30 teams, 5 in the Premier League, the dearly departed, all 24 in the Championship, and Ipswich in League One. So we're going to try and bash through nice and quickly the most influential player, as suggested by you guys, at each and every one of those clubs. As ever, I'll put the cry out, get involved in the comments. I'll try, it'll probably fall on deaf ears to say, let's try and keep the emotional, it's a joke, reactions in the comments. Just put your own opinion if you don't agree with what's about to come up on the screen, and see if you can do that in a nice, polite and calm, well-mannered way, which we sometimes don't get in the YouTube comments. Shall we do this? We'll go through the Premier League ones, then the Championship. We can go in order, highest ranked team to lowest, ending with lovely old Ipswich as number 30. Most influential player at each club. Let's go. Aston Villa is a fairly obvious one, and the name came up several times. Jack Grealish is blindingly obvious, isn't it? He is their best player, but a couple of other things. Captain, homegrown player who's come through, and it is blindingly obvious when he came back into that team in the 18-19 season, and then whoop-de-doo, joined in with John McGinn and Tammy Abraham, and they won 10 games on the trot. Leads by example on the pitch. Learning off it, I think, let's just say, but kind of unarguable there, his influence on Aston Villa. Calvin Phillips, another homegrown player who's come through at his club. And speaking of NFL players and quarterbacks, everything goes through Calvin Phillips. There may be an argument now, since the arrival of Rafinha, that he's not the best player in the team anymore, Calvin Phillips, but certainly in terms of the pattern of play and what happens when he's not around, it was a bit of, what's the word? A landslide in the votes from the Leeds fans we heard of as their most influential player. Here's an interesting one. From the Fulham fans I heard from was Harrison Reed. Defensive midfielder, central midfielder, came in on loan last season, worked his way into the team towards the end. If we'd done this last season, it would have been Alexander Mitrovic all day long. He kind of got them up by himself, but he's not in the team anymore, and Reed's in and out, so perhaps they're a little bit short of a key influential figure there at Fulham. But that was the name that came up. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And another team down at the bottom, maybe lacking some influential figures, are West Brom. But the name that you guys said was Matheus Pereira. Definitely last season he would have been the guy. Not a whooper or a holler or a big sort of captain type figure, but a creative spark and the one that thrust them forward to promotion last season. Again, a struggling team. So these things kind of contradict, because even people who are having positive influence in a struggling team, it's hard for them to shine and for their influence to come through. But he was the guy there. Sheffield United, and there were shouts out for Chris Basham at Sheffield United and John Fleck, but more for Billy Sharp. And again, Billy Sharp will now admit he's not Sheffield United's best player, but there's something here about the influence of the homegrown guy, the experienced guy, the fan of the team, that the supporters, a kind of conduit between the supporters and the management and everything, that real senior player figure. And to be fair to Billy Sharp, he's still got a few goals this season, hasn't he? But definitely there in a leadership role and still a highly influential character for the Blades. We're going to drop down to the Championship now, and we'll work our way through our 24 Championship teams. The most obvious one on the entire list is Emi Buendia. We've talked quite a lot over the last week or two since he's been suspended about the ludicrous comparison between him not in the team for Norwich in the Championship and him in the team. They're essentially runaway champions with him in the team and relegation candidates without him, the points per game says. You would argue that sometimes not the best example on the pitch with his temperament, but just drives that team and so important to them. And he, along with Tom Brady, were my kind of thoughts and inspiration for the video. So maybe the most influential player at any of the teams we're going to talk about there in terms of performance on the pitch with and without is Buendia. Ivan Toney was the name that came up for Brentford, and it's a player who's not been there too long, and a bit of a surprise actually that, and I'm not saying that I disagree with it, that he's become that influential that quickly, because if you remember last season, although Ben Rama was fantastic for Brentford, it was always a joint effort and the goals were shared around, whereas it does feel a little bit different this season. Tony's strong, can play with his back to goal, can go in behind, can score with his head, with both feet, different types of goals, and it does feel like he is really the key guy at Brentford now. And when you see the team sort of celebrating, it does feel, maybe Pontus Jansson would have an argument against this, that he is maybe the most influential player in that regard as well, but certainly for the goal scoring, maybe that just tips him over the top there. Wow. Conor Hourihane was who you guys said for Swansea City. And two things. One, he's only there on loan. And two, he's only been there for 4 games. However, they won the FA Cup game that he debuted in. By the way, we're recording at 2 o'clock and they're about to play in about 3 hours' time. So hopefully this is up before they play Man City. He may not feature in that one. But my point was going to be, in the 3 league games, he scored in all of them. And a key goal against Norwich. I just think the idea from Swansea fans is, although maybe an Andre Ayew was carrying this burden, around the rest of the team, okay, Matt Grimes is the captain. I just think Hourihane now could be the standard bearer that maybe can just edge them up the level they need to get the job done this season. So it makes some sense when I'm hearing that. I think it's a hope from Swansea fans that he is going to be as influential as they want him to be going forward. Reading, John Swift. I mean, Reading have got some excellent players. Good captain in Liam Moore as well, who's certainly, Michael Morrison as well, quite influential on the pitch. A couple of old school leaders at the back there. But I don't think it's any coincidence. Reading had that crazy good start, then a bit of a slip, then a bit of a stabilising period. And then John Swift came back from injuries, and it does look a slightly different proposition. Play at number 10, come back in deeper, and certainly makes the team tick. Yes, Michael Olise is going to be the one who's worth a fortune there, and Lucas Shaw is getting the goals. But perhaps it is Swift, who I think is the captain as well. Is he the club captain or is that Liam Moore? I don't know anyway. But certainly well worthy of that shout out from the Reading fans. Wow. There's a couple here. This is Troy Deeney for Watford. A couple of players where the name came up and it was said, well, this guy's very influential but might have too much influence. So I won't say too much more about that in respects of Deeney, but certainly a very powerful figure at Watford and unarguably a very influential figure. Captain on the pitch, scoring goals, mainly from the penalty spot, it has to be said. But some would suggest that he had a hand how can we put this nicely? He had a hand in conveying the dressing room mood toward previous manager Vladimir Ivic to the board, and Vladimir Ivic is not there anymore. So read into it what you will, but big media figure now as well, Deeney, regularly on that circuit as well, and certainly a big name over there at Watford, and topping their influence stakes, I suspect. Jack Wilshere. Now, I put this one in. We obviously got some shouts for Steve Cook as well, but I kind of put this one in as a bit of an interesting one because one of the comments I got was, I hope it can be Jack Wilshere. And again, I guess it's the Hurahan thing at Swansea again of with Wilshere, a player who's been obviously very, very good in the past, been at the club on loan, kind of made this return, and they're looking to him to be something like what he was. And if he is, he'll have a great influence on Bournemouth's potential up in the top six there. Not much proven. And again, like Hurahan, only really been there for 3, 4, 5 games. But the potential's there and I can see the sense in the suggestion. Paddy McNair at Middlesbrough. Feels like there haven't been too many players actually gone through the eras in terms of from Pulis through Woodgate through to Warnock at Borough. McNair obviously schooled at Manchester United, wasn't he? And moved, I think, from central midfield back into centre-back. Very, very reliable player. And, as I say, some sense that he kind of spans these different eras at Borough where they've gone from parachute team to non-parachute team, struggling under Woodgate and now challenging without under Neil Warnock. So I fully get that suggestion from the Borough fans. There is Harvey Elliott. Now, I put that one in myself. I don't think we got any Blackburn fans actually participate. Where are you, Blackburn fans? Come on, get involved, you guys. But I was at Stoke versus Blackburn, and one of the few behind closed doors games that I've managed to get accreditation to. And despite Harvey Elliott's much mentioned young age, it was very, very clear that he was being played in a position where he could essentially come in and go where he wants. And it was very clear the central midfielders were told, give him the ball the whole time. So very much a case of we are prepared to rely on this guy to be on the ball all the time and do damage. So I put Harvey Elliott in there. Obviously, Adam Armstrong in amongst the goals and experienced heads like Bradley Johnson in there. But I'll go for Elliott there. You give me your thoughts in the comments. And another youngster there, Tyrese Campbell at Stoke City. Look, Stoke have got people like James Chester and Danny Bart at the back, who I think have probably been captains at previous clubs, haven't they? They've got John Obi Mikel in midfield. But all I will say is look at Stoke's performance pre-Tyrese Campbell getting injured and look at it afterwards. Yes, he may not be experienced or have that influence that some other players has, but it's a results business, and they seem to look like they had far more of a playoff challenge with Tyrese Campbell playing than without. So, yeah, think of that what you will and get your views in the comments. Jamie Patterson, similar story there at Bristol City. Possibly Chris Martin might have had an argument for this one. Thomas Callas at the back, perhaps. But again, look at Bristol City's drop-off and lack of creativity in that squad, in particular the period without Jamie Patterson. And I I suspect they'll be clamouring for him to be starting again regularly. The strange thing was he was loaned out to Derby, wasn't he, last season? But then since he came back, very, very much a key player there at Bristol City. Sean Morrison at Cardiff. We did have a couple of shouts for Kiefer Moore, but I have slightly overruled on that one, just on the basis that Morrison has just done everything at Cardiff, hasn't he, in terms of being the captain, in terms of scoring goals from long throw-ins, taking the throw-ins himself, being a threat from set play, and like I said before, alluding to players like Liam Moore, old school centre-back, big voice from the back, big influence, big character. That's why I've got him in there for Cardiff. There is Alan Brown at Preston. A tricky one, I think, Preston. I had to call this one as well. Brown was one of the potential contracts expiring. He and Daniel Johnson re-signed. Ben Pearson and Ben Davies have obviously gone their separate ways with the club. And I just think Brown, I think he's been captain, hasn't he? He's played right back and central midfield in a double pivot. Number 10, good goal scorer there. And I think in re-signing, he's just put himself as sort of the senior leader at the club there, given all his versatility and all the things he's done there. I think he has to come out in the influence category there. This is Alex Mowat. Could be gone in the summer, couldn't he? Lots of rumours linking him away. Central midfielder and captain for Barnsley, possibly. The best player there, although Callum Stiles may be having a tilt at that very, very soon. However, again, we talk about influence and a bit of experience. I mean, he's not any age Mowat, but he's been around a fair while, and they definitely play through him and things tick around him in midfield. And, I mean, he would unequivocally be number one were he to sign a new contract between now and July. Barnsley fans will hope he will, but cynics like me will think if it was going to happen, it would have happened already. But certainly a big influence there at the club, Captain Alex Mowat. It's Jed Wallace at Millwall. Now, there were quite a few shouts for Jake Cooper here, but I just feel in terms of what Millwall are at the moment, it has to be Wallace, because I think he's kind of the difference, the X factor in them being mid-table or possibly higher up and challenging for playoffs, which they were last season, and he was playing ever so well. The kind of creative spark and the possible big sail that could carry them forward. So yes, he's not a Jake Cooper who's played hundreds of games in a row, or a Hutchison who might be captain and a whooper and a hollerer. But I think in terms of how he pushes the needle for the team and how he can be the difference in those different levels, I think I would agree with the Millwall fans that told me Jed Wallace as most influential. Another loanee here. That says Kieran. That should say Kiernan. I must have been spell checked there. My apologies. I'm sure someone will point out the error of my way. Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. We had a couple of shouts for James Collins and who else? Pelly, Ruddock and Panzu as well. But from what I'm hearing from the Luton fans, in terms of just a quality level, someone like Dewsbury Hall, he's on loan from Leicester, is dragging the level of his teammates up and having a huge influence from central midfield on that team. I think the chances of them getting him permanently are fairly slim. I think Leicester have got high hopes, and it may be that he goes on loan somewhere else in the future, but certainly a bright future for Dewsbury Hall, and very well regarded over at Luton. Most influential at QPR, this one was a grand slam, wasn't it? Only just arrived back, Charlie Austin. He's got all of those things that we talked about with Billy Sharp earlier on in the video, hasn't he? A player that's returned to the club at a senior age or a sort of veteran time in his career. All of that influence, all of that status, essentially. And the big thing for Charlie Austin is that he was a star for QPR before, and he's done things at the club that others haven't in terms of his Premier League goal-scoring exploits for the Hoops. And is it a coincidence? Is it not? Austin comes back change the system. Austin comes in the team, scores a couple of goals, team starts winning again. So I think big character as well, and certainly pretty much a shoe in there for most influential for QPR. Jonathan Hogg, who I believe has signed a new contract. Was that recently or was that... I don't remember. He seems to have been there forever and ever. I think he signed one recently, hasn't he? Someone will correct me. But this was the suggestion. And it's been a hard road for Huddersfield in terms of pretty much from the second season in the Premier League through last season. Been a lot of games lost, hasn't it? And they've been trending downwards as a club. Obviously, expectations now with Carlos Corber on there. But Hogg has been in there the whole time as a captain and a kind of what's the word, talismanic type presence, I think I saw when doing my research. So it makes some sense, and one of the only ones now it seems, Schindler I think is still there, isn't he, who's been there a fair old while, so he wins the most influential category there at Huddersfield. Oh, here's another one where I got the suggestion, very influential, but maybe not in the best way. That may be unfair. Who knows? But I think Mr. Grabban gets a bad rap from that Sunderland documentary, doesn't he? And again, there seems to have been some issues with he and Mr. Lamouchi previously. So I'm sure Chris Hughton will have control over all of this. But an experienced player, a quality player at Championship level. He will deliver on the pitch and clearly an influential figure. Although Glenn Murray came in at the weekend and he scored a couple of goals for Chris Hughton up there. So we'll see what Grabban's influence is going forward on and off the pitch. Gustavo Hamer for Coventry. I had to go for Hamer, really. This may be a little bit best player. I mean, Callum O'Hare may be rivaling him at the moment in really good form, but just sort of a few lone players in that Coventry team, and Hamer is the one that they'd spent money on, and he's quite good fun. He's got that temperament, the same as Buendia, who we spoke about in terms of Norwich, but he's a player who I think can propel the team forward. He's a player of quality, and he could also be that player who you can nurture, develop, and then sell on for big money to develop your club going forward as well. So maybe not an old school English centre-back, but definitely up there in the influence stakes at Coventry. This is Matt Crooks for Rotherham. We did get shout out for Richard Wood, who is the old school centre-back who's been there for ages and ages, scored 2 in the playoff final as well. I just feel, looking at Rotherham right in the moment now, is that Richard Wood will have much less influence on whether they stay up or not than Matt Crooks will, because he appears to be the link between them being a kind of pragmatic team with an isolated forward to this goal-scoring number 10, helping link up this strong defence with some goals up the other end. So I suspect if Rotherham are going to stay up this season, it will be Crooks having quite the influence on it. God, it's a list video involving Sheffield Wednesday, so here is Barry Bannon yet again. Seems to be the name in all the lists when we do Sheffield Wednesday, but you have to say influence, central midfield playmaker, been there a long while, captain, and other players have left, haven't they? Okay, Tom Lees is there. Actually, is he the captain? I don't remember. And Sam Hutchison returned, but particularly for the quality on the pitch as well, and the way that the team can funnel things through him, set plays as well. Just, you would imagine where Wednesday would have been without him the past few seasons, let's just say. Oh, this is a big one, isn't it? Christian Bielik, and his influence remains to be seen because, unfortunately, for the second time in 2 seasons, he's got a bad injury and he's not going to be around. Bielik, you can see there, even from the picture, strapping, tall, he's Polish, isn't he? Central midfielder, signed from Arsenal. He was on Charlton on loan and he would play centre-back and then move into midfield, etc. He'd come into the team from that last injury under, I think it was under Wayne Rooney in his temporary charge. And the team just looked so much better with him in it, and we'll see how they struggle without him. But most importantly, good luck to him on his recovery, because he's a super player and so unlucky to have 2 injuries like that in 2 years. But as I say, the influence remains to be seen how they go without him at Derby. Jeremy Bella was the name that came up for Birmingham. I suppose Birmingham have, well, they've not been great this season. They do have sort of people like, I don't know, a Harley Dean or a Gary Gardner, who are a bit more of the, I guess, shouting and hollering. There's Lukas Jutkovic, who's been a very, very big influence. But in terms of a player arriving on a good deal, and in a time where Birmingham haven't been too creative, and with Jutkovic being used less and less, I think Bella is probably a fair shout from the Blues fans. Been a great signing as a free agent, creative spark in that team, set play guy, penalty taker, etc., etc. And he tops the list there at Birmingham. And another shoe in there, Adebayo Akinfenwa. Maybe he's not a shoe in at Wycombe, because Matt Bloomfield has been there for hundreds and hundreds of games, hasn't he, as well? But I just feel Wycombe, in championship terms, small club, Akinfenwa is just a huge character, isn't he, on TV, on radio, with his beast moniker. And to be fair, he does actually make a difference when he plays. He's not used very much. I think he's 38, isn't he? But you still, in terms of his influence about the place, you still can't deny it. Really, that's all the championship, which leaves Ipswich. And again, some would argue too influential. Luke Chambers has been an absolute workhorse for my team, Ipswich Town. Although some people do claim that when it went from Mick McCarthy to Paul Hurst, that Paul Hurst did not win over the likes of Chambers, Skuse and Białkowski, and the players won out there. I don't particularly much like that narrative, but I know it's a narrative held by some in the Ipswich Town fan base, which they're entitled to, of course. I just feel poor old Chambers, wrong place, wrong time, captain at the club at the worst time in its, well, history, essentially, certainly in the last 60 years. And he's put his body on the line and just played a terrific amount of games. So I do have the utmost respect for the guy, but certainly an influential figure at my team, Ipswich Town. Let me know what you think in the comments of any of those calls. I thought it'd be a fun video to do, especially having heard all about Tom Brady just coming in and raising the level of everybody. I suppose he's the one, isn't he? This mix of statesman-like leadership qualities, but quality on the pitch and influence on others as well. And then you do have your Buendia at Norwich, who you probably, wouldn't be putting in your leadership group, but stick him on the pitch and let his playing do the talking as well. And then, very interesting, the likes of Deeney and Graben perhaps having a little bit too much influence on the dressing room, if rumours are to be believed. As I said at the top of the video, please get your comments in. Let's try and avoid the overly emotional responses. If you do feel that it should be a different player for your club, just pop it in there with your reasoning. It doesn't have to be yelling and hollering and everything's a fraud and a joke and all of that nonsense that we often hear. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, and I'll do more kind of survey type ones. It's been fun for me to do and get a kind of finger on the pulse of what you guys are actually thinking in terms of these key figures at your clubs. Thank you very much for watching. Thoughts in the comments, ones you agree with, ones you disagree with, and ideas for other videos like this. All good fun, and every club needs them, and that was my take on who the most influential players are at the 30 clubs I cover. Over and out. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to see more videos from this channel, hit the subscribe button, and to be notified every time we upload, ring the bell for those notifications to come through on your device. If you really want to support the channel and me as a content creator, I will be eternally grateful if you head over to the merch store and grab something, or support over on Patreon, patreon.com/BenjaminBloom. Thank you for your time. Go and watch another video.